Certainly, it's all negative across the globe, and also here, our local markets are also coming under pressure. I think, as you mentioned, the markets overseas, the US, we ended in the red yesterday, and of course followed by Asia this morning, all in the red. And I think the big driver there is the earnings that we've seen out of the US. Missing expectations, and I think that's obviously putting a lot of pressure on the US market, and it put a bit of pressure on the Asian markets, and then we're following in those footsteps. So we have come under pressure, and I looked at the local markets, we're all negative across the board, and I think it's more of what's happening globally.
Now, on a risk-off day today, that should be good news for gold because it's considered a safe haven asset. How have we seen that commodity doing, and do we expect that it can ever hit $2,000 an ounce?
I must say gold has been holding quite steady around the $1,275 an ounce, and I think it has been quite impressive, particularly looking at the strength of the dollar that we've seen over the past couple of weeks. The dollar has been strong, and I think for the gold price to have held around these sort of level, it's quite impressive. And I think this speaks volume about the fact that, yes, despite the fact that the dollar is strong, there are a number of other factors that continue to offer support for the yellow metal. We know that gold seems to perform well as a safe haven during all these uncertainties, and we've seen the uncertainties. I mean, whether it's the uncertainties out in the in the Eurozone with Brexit, whether it's the uncertainties around the US elections, whether it's also the negative sentiments that we've seen today, gold will remain relatively well supported, and I think that's what's supporting it. And of course, we can also expect, and I think from a demand that we've seen coming out of India, we know that there's some, that Diwali festivals that are coming through. The Indians consume more gold in this time of the year. So we can expect gold to be relatively stronger. But whether or not it will reach 2,000, Nombu, it's anyone's guess.
Now, just looking at the British pound, that has been really hammered of late, and I see it depreciated further today, about 0.2% vis-a-vis the dollar. Can we expect the pound to actually get on par with the US dollar? And when we look at the inflationary implications for the UK, does it have any impact for emerging markets?
Look, the pound has certainly been under a lot of pressure, and I think this is since the beginning of the announcement around Brexit. The pound has come under heavy pressure, sitting around the 121 against the US dollar. It remains around above the 120, and I think it looks like it might actually break through that 120. However, I think at the current levels, it looks perhaps to be stabilizing consolidating around the current level. It looks a little bit overdone at current levels in the absence of any new developments around the Brexit. Remember, there's still going to be a couple of negotiations for the UK to eventually leave the Eurozone. So those discussions and negotiations will determine which direction the pound takes. So for now, to say parity with the dollar, I think it will be just a pure speculation. We'll have to see, wait and see. And I think there's been some quarters from the Eurozone leaders who said they are going to go and take the hard line against the UK and make it very difficult for them to leave the Eurozone. So we will see when those developments unfold. But I think it's too early for us to speculate as to which direction. And when you look at it from an inflation point of view, there has been inflation in the UK, and I think that will support the currency in the absence on any developments around the Brexit.
Now, Maudi, we know that today is a very significant day in the economic landscape of South Africa. Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan delivering his midterm budget. From a market perspective, what is it that you're hoping he's going to say? We know that in the wings are the ratings agencies who are going to be looking very closely at his speech.
No, most certainly. I think the one first relief is the fact that Mr. Gordhan, or Pravin Gordhan, will be presiding over this budget, because it was very uncertain. It looked very difficult or challenging, with all the political tensions that we saw over the past couple of weeks. So we're happy that eventually he gets to preside, and he's still the Minister of Finance after all. Number of challenges or number of things. We know that the medium-term budget, usually it's not a big focus, but I think there will be a number of things that are closely monitored. One of them is the growth projection. Treasury has got projections for the South African economy to grow slightly higher than what most of the institutions are projecting. You look at the Treasury in Feb, they projected 0.9% for this year. That has since been revised. The Reserve Bank has now revised the growth to 0.4. You've got the IMF projections around 0.1. So one, we will have to focus closely and see whether the Treasury is still positive or they revise that growth. That's the one element that will be looked at. And of course, we know that there's been a number of challenges as well. The debt level is another one. You know, we've had rising debt levels in the country. Now we've breached that 50% mark. And I think that will also be another one on how they deal with that debt level. Is it going to continue? The other one is the budget deficit. That will be the main focus. You know, how will they deal with that budget deficit? Will they accept the fact that it's going to disappoint or breach their expectations or their targets for that budget deficit? So it's a number of three things, but I think those three ones are very crucial. The budget deficit, the debt level, and also the growth. How are they going to assist the South African economy to grow in light of all the challenges that we have in this country?
Okay, Maudi, well, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. That was Maudi Lentsoane. He's from Lehumo Capital. And